What's going on, good people? What's going on? In partnership with WYTV7 Christian Broadcasting Network, this is When Men Open Up, a show where we are redefining manhood through transparency. My name is Dominique,
And I am Dexter.
and this is When Men Open Up. And what's the topic for today, man?
Hey, so we're gonna talk about some relationship stuff, some
Yeah,
commitment,
commitment issues.
ultimately, the fear of committing and the fear of relationships.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard?
And last year, last week was a good topic,
Yeah,
and it kind of somewhat falls in line with this topic. We was talking about unforgiveness, and this time we wanted to talk about, and it's still in line with relationships,
yeah,
but this time we wanted to talk about commitment
yeah,
issues,
and being afraid to mess up relationships.
right?
Yeah.
And when I was looking into this and I was thinking about this, I was just finding out that there's so many different things that can cause us to have commitment issues on some level. I think many of us have commitment issues on some level, whether we admit it or not. But one thing I do want to dismiss when it comes down to commitment issues is when you do have what we call commitment issues, it doesn't necessarily mean you don't want commitment.
True.
You know,
Facts.
and I think we all, or for the most part, we all develop some level of emotional attachment. The thing is, what we always speak about, especially with forgiveness, is that fear.
Yeah.
That fear of losing something, that fear of being constricted on some level. It's just that fear of losing something. It's that risk and so forth. But I really do believe, man, when it comes down to that commitment issues, bro, we have to really take time out to really recognize specifically, you know what I'm saying? And not just hold on to that label. Okay, I have commitment issues. Okay, let's dive a little deeper. Let's dive a little deeper, really understanding what's really going on. So we're really focusing on the men, but this is
Yeah.
for everybody, but we really focus on the men because this is something that we normally don't really talk about too much.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely a subject that I think speaks to everybody, not just us, But it's funny you say that because that is a go-to phrase. Hey, it's me. I don't know how to do this,
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that
Yeah,
too.
so let's dive in,
Yeah,
man.
I know one of the big things with with guys, and we'll just talk about this because we always hear about it when it come down to guys is when we talk about marriage.
Yeah.
And I was looking at some statistics, some research, and with men, it doesn't necessarily mean that we just don't want it. What I read is we just look at it as a huge risk. So I was looking at a few models with our behavior and our mindsets, and I was looking at the investment versus risk model. So for some of us, we focus so much on what we're going to invest, and not just invest, but what's the risk?
Yeah.
Just like with stocks,
Right.
we know there's a chance that we may make some money,
Yeah.
but man, it's a risk with all that. And some of us, we value that risk
Yeah.
more than anything.
Yeah.
It's that risk that, you know what, if I get a divorce, I'm gonna lose a lot. I don't want to come in with so much and lose it all.
Yeah.
I don't want to, with the court system is a little biased when it come down to women. And this is not to say whether these particular men are wrong or right, but it's really understanding that mindset, and we have to really identify what that mindset is.
I mean, you speak. You hit the nail on the head. It's a mindset issue, And I would hope that if we're talking about entering into a marital relationship, that your mind doesn't automatically go to divorce. But I do agree with the risk reward component. Risk and investment, and one of the things is that going into a relationship, you have to know that at some point in time, you're going to have to make a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we don't really do the best job of considering the sacrifice that's going to be necessary for the health of the relationship. Maybe we do consider the sacrifice, and truthfully, we're not willing to pay that cost. And so that's an issue that many men deal with when we say, "Hey, look, I don't really want to let go of the hanging out with the fellas, or
Right.
I feel like I'm having to give up too much of myself, and that scares me."
Yeah.
And so that's a mindset issue. Another thing is that I think the fear of relationships and why it's hard to commit is that oftentimes we're very familiar with our own insecurities, or we're familiar with our own inadequacies more specifically. We know our shortcomings, and when you're in a relationship, relationships require vulnerability, and nobody, especially if you want to hold on to those insecurities, nobody really wants to be vulnerable because there's an unknown. There's a fear associated with it. Can this person handle all of this stuff I'm dealing with? Now here's the flip side of that. You proceed in this relationship, you get married. At some point in time, you can't maintain the facade. They're going to have to see that stuff. And so these are some of the things I think that kind of keep us from moving forward, because I don't want to reveal all of this. You know, this is too heavy for me to show.
Yeah, and that's another risk, that emotional risk. You know, it's that I'm exposing myself, and if I do expose everything and share everything about you, at the back of my mind is still that chance that we may not work out, and I didn't expose everything to this person about myself. I think another thing is that dedication / constraint, and you hit on that. So let's talk about this for a minute. So it's with dedication, it's about what I want to do versus what I have to do, and we focus so much on what I want to do and what I have to do. Do I have to do this? Do I really want to do this? And based upon that, are these things a constraint? So you hear some men that talk about, let's just bring up the example with kids. You know, you're not gonna lock me down. See, with that statement, that's a very strong statement. So what they're really referring to is that they're referring to that children in that point in their life is a constraint. So we focus on constraints. What is considered a constraint at this particular area in my life? When it comes down to my personality, what is constraint? For some people, it's children. For some people, it's the fact that I got to share property with somebody else. I got to actually live with somebody else. It's real though, you know. With some people, it's the fact that, you know what, business is number one in my life right now. You know what, my career is number one in my life, and if I got to bring somebody else in my life, then you know what, business may not be number one. Or a lot of the time that I'm putting in my business, I'm gonna have to share that. I'm gonna have to give some of that up. So, and that's why you hear some people say, you know what, I want this, but I just don't want to feel stuck. I don't want to feel constrained, and I just don't want all these constraints when it comes down to a committed relationship.
And I think we got to be careful about that, because sometimes that can be assumptive.
Exactly.
You know, who said that you're going to be constrained? You know, at the end of the day, and we've talked about this before on another episode, but my wife and I, we do life together, we do business together, and so I don't look at it as a constraint. You know, and you have to have that conversation where, hey, look, if we're building, let's build together. And then what does building together look like? I think we oftentimes we allow ourselves to conveniently hide behind the excuse of, well, this person is going to keep me from, they're going to block me, or they're going to keep me from growing, and I don't want to do this because, you know, I don't want to let this part of me go, like I mentioned earlier. But the truth of the matter is how long are you willing to hold on to that convenient excuse? At some point in time, are you really going to pursue relationships, or are you committed to just a lifestyle of being single? And nothing is wrong with that, but you have to be able to answer the question, because when you're talking about relationships, you're not the only person involved. There's someone else who is literally committing their life to you, and we play games. You know, if we're not careful, you're going to end up harming that person emotionally.
Right.
You're going to end up doing a greater disservice to a person that we may very well care about, because we are afraid to answer those or ask those questions of ourselves.
Yeah. And the question becomes, what type of relationship do you really want? You know, I mean, what type of relationship do you really want? And I think that's one of the biggest things that we have to answer before we bring anyone in our life. You know what I'm saying? So we can make sure we're on the same page. And it's not necessarily mean that if for whatever reason, business is number one in your life, we're not here to say whether that's wrong or right. But if it is, then you have to really understand that. You have to understand that for one, and you have to verbalize that to whoever it is that you're probably dating or getting to know or whatever the case may be. But the thing is, once you find out what type of relationship that you want, then you have to really ask yourself, is that really possible? Or does that really add up to the lifestyle that you really want, to the thing that you just don't want to sacrifice? It may.
Yeah.
It just may. But if you you gotta understand, like, if you just intend on just going on a date, I don't know, once a month, you know what I'm saying, with someone, then, can you be upset if that person is upset that, hey, we ain't spend no time together? You know what I'm saying? But we have to really understand these things, because this allows us to understand how to communicate. We have to understand all of this. It's so important to really understand this thing, so you can really know how to really verbalize that. Because who knows, it may just be someone out there who may have the same mindset as you and say, look, business is number one in my life too. So it just so happened that we got the same mindset.
Yeah.
I ain't trying to see your face every day. And you ain't trying to see my face every day, so this may just work out.
Yeah.
But who knows? And you just got to understand that.
And I'll tell you one thing that it still kind of bothers me. The memes that would say relationship goals, right? And what you would have is you would have a picture of a couple smiling or holding hands or something like that. And that's a very superficial perspective of a relationship, because you don't know the work behind the scenes that they're putting in order to get that image that everybody sees. And the truth is, you may not, or we may not be willing to put in that type of work to get that relationship goals. And so it speaks to what you're saying, that collectively in a relationship, we have to ask ourselves, okay, what is it that we really want? Sadly, I think we kind of, trip and stumble in relationships, and we're discovering it as the relationship goes along.
That's very true.
And what ends up happening is that sometimes the relationship is not strong enough to handle all of those hiccups. And so we do ourselves a disservice when you don't know yourself well enough, but yet you're trying to hitch yourself to another person in a relationship.
You know what? And you said that when you don't know yourself enough. And part of that is also understanding your family history as well.
Yeah.
I know this one woman, every woman in her family, her aunties, all of them are single. And I think one of them are divorced. Even her mother wasn't married as well. And she's, pushing 40 and she's not married. So the thing is, I think that's something you have to really look into.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And really understanding, what is that bent? What's really what's really going on. Some people believe in curses. Some people, the word talks about iniquities. And I think we have to really, when we talked about genograms in one of our videos too, and really, and those of you who don't know what a genogram is, it's almost like a detailed family tree, just to get some people a visual. And with this genogram, when you have everybody listed, you have other things listed as well, as far as health problems or health conditions. You also have maybe they were divorced, maybe there was some abuse in some area, maybe there was some alcohol abuse, or domestic abuse, or all these different things. And when you have all these things listed in your family tree or in a genogram, it really helps you understand why you're probably dealing with that as well. So things can be passed on. And I think that's something that we really have to dive into, and really understanding, and not just saying, things is just not going my way. It's a little more to it than that. So I really do believe that people just need to really look into that.
I mean, and that's powerful that you said that. I'm a firm believer in utilizing that tool, especially as it relates to families. I wanted to say that, we're talking about the fear of messing up relationships. That can be a legitimate fear, because the person may be concerned that I didn't have that example. As you mentioned, the young lady who didn't have any, none of the relatives were married. Where was the example that modeled what a healthy relationship looks like? And it is a legitimate concern to say, you know what, I'm afraid that I'm going to mess up this good thing because, I don't really know how to love
Right.
my wife, or I don't know how to love my fiance the way that they want to be loved, and I didn't see it.
Exactly.
And we talked about this before. One of the things that I did prior to getting married or in growing up, I would look to people who were in healthy relationships, and I would say, uh, I want a marriage like that.
Yeah.
Those men were transparent before me, and they showed me how they love their spouse. They showed me the bad times.
That's
And
good.
how they reared their children, and so I was able to glean certain characteristics from people that I looked up to. And so, just be mindful that the fear to commit to a relationship may be rooted in the fact that the person didn't have an example who modeled it before them, and as a means of not wanting to say hurt you, they're choosing to back away. As a means of not wanting to hurt you in the context of the relationship, they're choosing not to proceed in the relationship because they don't know how to advance this relationship.
That's good. That's good. They're seeking that wise counsel. If somebody else is doing something right, I think it's very mindful to go to that particular couple or group
Yeah.
who's really is doing some things right. Another thing is, when I say you said understanding yourself, understanding the family history, but even understanding, that some people have those traumatic experiences as well. So maybe somebody left you, or maybe something, drastic happened, and your parents had a divorce, and you just seen the pain and the discomfort and just the separation and what that really did, not just to them but to your whole family. That's probably something that's always in the back of your mind too. And I really do believe with traumatic experiences, that's something as men we just can't deal with it alone. And I really do believe that we just gotta really we don't necessarily have to go to counseling, but like you said, really go to someone else and somebody who has that wisdom, that understanding, somebody that we really trust, and understand that this is just not something you just need to do alone, and really seek wise counsel, like I said before.
It's funny that you use that example, and in a moment of transparency, I'll share this, that I recall, prior to getting married, that somehow I convinced myself that if I didn't put a title on the relationship, it wasn't a relationship. And I did that under the false assumption that why are we allowing feelings to get involved if we're not official? You get what I'm saying? And that was I ruined a lot of good relationships by being naive and by being inconsiderate of the fact that when you're involved with people, emotions are bound to happen. There's bound to be some type of connection. And so, but I was doing it from the mindset that, I don't want to hurt you, and I don't want to get hurt. And so as long as we don't make this thing official, no one's going to get hurt. But at the end of the day, what ends up happening is that we can ruin really good friendships. We can ruin opportunities, countless other opportunities when we, like I said, don't address those inner issues that we have going on. And we all have some insecurities. I think the reality is that we have to be truthful about what those issues are. And when you go into relationships, one of the hardest things to do is to ask those questions. We're so caught up in the romanticism. We're so caught up in, the fluffy ideas that we don't really want to get deep. But you're going to have to get deep, especially if you see yourself committing to this person in a long-term relationship. Because guess what? You don't want the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. You need to answer all those questions before, the I do. And men, likewise, you need to get a better understanding of the partner that you're committing to, because God forbid when you say I do and you're like, man, I didn't know all this stuff about you. Well, guess what? You just missed a great window to ask all those questions.
You're right, because I recently went through marriage counseling, and I could have sworn, we knew so much, and just that marriage counseling just brought up so many things, and we just don't think about everything just to discuss, and there was a lot of things that marriage counseling actually pushed us to really start having conversations about and really start planning about and so forth. And these are just simple things that we just didn't think about. It's not things that we just avoided, but you just don't think about everything. But I was having a conversation with someone else, and they was talking about how they were struggling with commitment because they was investing time with folks who ain't trying to be committed. So, so that I think that it's funny that you talked about the questions, because some of us got quote unquote commitment issues because we're caught up trying to be committed with folks who ain't trying to be committed. Yeah. So I think we have to really, dive deep into that and really ask those real questions. I remember somebody, it's not funny, but it is. Somebody on my timeline said, you know what, I just, after like 3 dates or 4 dates, this man just told me, or I just found out that his brother have kids. And part of that was her fault, because I think that's very important to understand or find out, does that person have kids? But sometimes we neglect asking certain questions because we don't want to seem too pushy. We don't want to scare them off. And what we're doing is we're actually putting their perspective or their value over ours. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So we have to have those boundaries. There's certain things that you need to understand within a certain time frame, so you know whether you need to move on, right, or move on to another direction.
And listen, I think we've all been guilty of this at some point in time, and that is we want those who don't want to be wanted, and so at the end of the day, in a relationship, I would say this. I did mention the need to be for sacrifice. There are certain sacrifices that you have to make in a healthy relationship. But I want to caveat that by saying that you don't want to lose yourself, your being and who you are, for the sake of that relationship. And I see that happen far too often, that for the sake of saying that I'm in a relationship, a person denies themselves totally, so much so that they lose themselves in that relationship.
Yeah, and Valerie just asked, when should you ask about kids? I don't see anything wrong with asking on the first date. That has a lot to do with them if they have kids. And some people, they don't want to date someone with kids. So that's something that I've heard of that plenty of times. So if that is something that that's what you believe in, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't want to date anybody with kids, then I think it's very important to find out in the beginning, because then after a long run, you got feelings invested. You're gonna feel like you wasted time. So part of really displaying our value and our worth is really setting those boundaries and understanding that I have to ask these questions for my own benefit. So I know, do I need to move on or do I need to move away? It's really just that simple.
Yeah, listen, man, this is this has been a heavy conversation, and I tell you that in speaking with young couples, and I do counseling, and I know you counsel. The reality is that relationships are serious. It's a real deal. There is a honeymoon period. But then there's a time where all the glamour has worn off, and the person that you're with is the person that you're with.
Right.
And so, and that's a very real thing, and so you have to, like I said, on the front end of the relationship, take the time to ask the questions, don't be afraid of asking the questions, because ultimately some of the things that you willfully choose to overlook asking is going to rear its head later. And it may rear its head at a point where you're too heavily invested to do anything about it.
Right. And I'll just leave people with this. I just challenge people to, if you think or believe that you have commitment issues, really just ask yourself, what is it specifically that's going on? Really take time out to identify and recognize what is that fear? What is it really stemming from? Let's not just focus on, it's just fear of what, and what's really influencing that. really take time out to really just do some back history on your family, what really runs in your family, and really have an understanding of that, and really just question yourself. What type of relationship do you really desire? What type of relationship do you want? What are your values? What's really number one, number two, number three, and so forth in your life? And this is going to really help you understand this is how you navigate. And when you do list that, sometimes we list things because it sounds good.
Yeah.
But really ask yourself after you list each thing, does my actions, does my lifestyle really reflect that? And I think that's going to really help you along the way of really getting over that. I think many of us, if not all of us, have commitment issues on some level. But the question is, what are we really going to do about it? And what actions are we taking to really, for that not to be a barrier for us to really have that some type of emotional attachment to someone?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, brother. And my final thing I would say on this subject matter is, as it relates to insecurities, you have to ask yourself, what is the message that you're hearing? Because at the end of the day, you may be really walking away from a great relationship because something in you has convinced you that you can't proceed in this relationship. Something in you is telling you that I'm going to mess it up, or I'm not ready. The truth is, you very well may be ready. You just need to address that issue that keeps causing you to second guess yourself. Because sometimes, it is very well, we do this quite often. We talk ourselves out of a blessing. We talk ourselves out of a good thing. And that is largely because we don't see ourselves the right way. And so if I can leave anything, please remember that.
Most definitely, most definitely. And those of you that's enjoying this show, please take time out to share the broadcast and share this video, and invite people to tune in with us each Tuesday at 6 p.m. on our Facebook page. Just type in "When Men Open Up" and you'll find us. And if you're loving this show, you can easily go to WYTV.org and easily just make a monetary contribution. And we're just loving everyone and all the support. Please continue to share the video. And do you want to just go over the upcoming event that we have?
So listen, September 29th, that's next Saturday at the University of Phoenix. This is for all men in the CSRA. Dominique and I are hosting an event under the When Men Open Up banner called Rediscovering the Lost You. We are dedicated, we are committed to helping men not only become their best selves, but really deal with the issues that are keeping men bound. This is a safe place. One of the things that I know as men, we often find ourselves feeling like we have to be responsible for everything 24/7 all the time. And so this is a place where you can come back, you can just sit, you can have somebody pour into you, you can be equipped with some tools that are really going to help thrust you and catapult you to your next level, and also get you to help you get whole in some of those areas, and some of those areas that are served as your insecure spaces. So next Saturday, the 29th at University of Phoenix at 10 o'clock, we would love to have you at our event, Rediscovering the Lost You.
Most definitely. You can easily just go on Eventbrite, just type in Rediscovering the Lost You and you'll find it. And it's easy registration. If you have any questions, you can easily inbox them on our Facebook page, or you can email us at whenmenopenup@gmail.com. This is When Men Open Up, where we are redefining manhood through transparency. My name is Dominique.
And I am Dexter.
And we are out. Join us next week. Thank you so much.